tech we're missing. And there we go. We are all here. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so excited about this presentation. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the largest community for revenue people in sales, revenue, sales operations, sales, and oh, sorry, I got something on my throat. uh, Sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablements, aka our modern sales pros. I am Eduardo. I am a community events manager at Modern Sales Pros and your host for the next hour. And our mission is my mission here today is to make sure everyone will get the most out of this panel, including our speakers. If you're still not a member of MSP, you will receive an email very soon asking you to join, so you can join this amazing community of people and you can get all the help that you need. And if you like the content from this event today, and I'm sure you will because Beck and NG are amazing, you will love our summit. It's coming up next month. Next month because we're still in June. It's from July 12th through the 14th, and we put together 16 amazing events with amazing content and speakers. You can hear from the CEO of Zoom Info, Clary, Winning by Design, and other sales leaderships like people from HubSpot, Dooley, Outreach, and Atrium, and so much more. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you to register for this amazing event right now, so you can click there and register for the event. And before we jump into this session and start hearing from Beck and Angie, I have some housekeeping notes. First of all, this event is being recorded, so you'll be able to see the recording in the Modern Sales Pros past events page. And we also have some polls today. I'm gonna open the first poll right now so we can train a little bit and see how it works. Just give me 1 second, it's open. So we have a presentation today and it's Titanic Bay like themed. How many of you have watched the movie? So for you to go to the poll, on your right-hand side, there is like a panel. You can click on the poll. There's like a red dot right there, and then you can vote yes or no. I believe everyone watched Titanic because that's a classic, right? So let's go ahead and vote in the poll. We have 2 more polls coming up during the presentation, so make sure you know how to use it. Oh, who said no? I want to know in the chat. Yeah, you should watch it. It's amazing. It's pretty long, but amazing. So make sure you know how to use the poll because we have some important questions for you to answer during the presentation. I'm going to stop the poll right now, close it, but I still want to know who said no because that's not acceptable. Go ahead and watch Titanic. So this is being recorded. We'll be able to see the recording in our MSP previous events page. And please, I was talking with our panelists in the back. They were like, we're so excited to hear everything, like all the questions. Please ask the audience to send us a lot of questions. So on your right-hand side, right by the poll, you have the Q&A tab. Please go there and send all your pressing questions to Angie and Beck because they love answering questions. Or you can also go into the chat and put like some questions in there for us, and we will be sure to get to your questions. If we cannot get to your questions today, the Traction Complete team will definitely send a follow-up email answering everything that you need to know. As I said, this event today is sponsored by the team at Traction Complete, and we have Beck here today. She is the VP of Marketing at Traction Complete. I am going to pass the mic for her so she can run the show and introduce herself, Traction Complete, and Angie to you, the audience. And please make sure you're sending them a lot of questions. Beck, I'm going to pass it to you right now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Eduardo. We're excited to be here. And we hope that everyone has a little bit of fun today. I think in Canada, we're going into Canada long weekend, and you guys are heading into the 4th of July next Monday. So what a good way to lead into your weekend is to join Angie and I on this webinar today. So thank you for joining us. To kick it off, just a little bit about Traction Complete for those who don't know us. We create software to help people simplify their data and flows in Salesforce. Our suite of apps help you automate data cleanup, account hierarchies, and lead matching and routing, so you don't have to. We're on a mission to empower organizations, sales, and RevOps teams like those at Asana, Cisco, and DocuSign to simplify, save time, and scale faster. I'd like to introduce my co-captain for today, Angie Swenson, CRM analyst, business analyst, and architect from Huber Engineered Materials. What I love about Angie is that she's actually been on both sides of the fence during her career, working as a sales rep and also as a sales and Salesforce operations expert, and even more. Welcome, Angie. You've got an interesting background. Let's hear a little bit more about you.
Well, it's a very long background. Invite anybody to check out my LinkedIn profile, but I have a lot of background. I've been, my degree was forensic chemistry. I worked in the laboratory for many years, not many years, but a few years. And, you know, I take a lot of my chemistry background into what I do now. I worked in sales, and now I'm on the CRM side. I even had a little stint where I owned my own business and did Salesforce consulting and configuration. So I've done a lot of different things.
Well, I'm excited to see how you approach the topic of today with that very background. I think having a mix of experiences will really add to the approach that you take when you're considering what you do with bad data, because you know the experiences that other people are going through.
Absolutely. I mean, well, you know, I said I take a lot of my different backgrounds and apply them to what I'm doing. And if there's anything I take away from my chemistry background, it is the need and the desire to have clean data. I'm constantly, you know, happy and proud of our Salesforce environment. Right now, my environment has less than 2% duplicates, but I'm not saying that it's always that way, and I'd like to get it down to under 1%. But you know, new data is coming in on a daily basis. So, you know, I struggle with that a lot.
I'm sure with 2%, everyone else in the audience is now sitting on the edge of their seats going, how do I get there? How do I get there? I think this is the only reference in the rest of the presentation today that is not Titanic inspired, but I feel like there's a bit of a rise of like tidying up or getting organized even on TV. So shows like, I think The Home Edit or Marie Kondo, those things are really getting a heyday. But I feel like this movement is also getting, you know, making its way into business and the way that people approach their operations and technology. What do you think, Angie?
I definitely do. I'm a fan of the Home Edit team. So I love rainbow sorting things. You should see my closet. It's definitely not Home Edit worthy, but I love, you know, keeping things clean in my own way and organizing. And absolutely, I do think it's coming to the business a lot. But how is it coming to the business? I think oftentimes people are just so overwhelmed. Where to begin? The more we get intelligent with our data and analytical, with so much information out there, you're realizing that there's a lot of bad information out there. So how do you, you know, like struggle? Where do you begin? And I think that's what a lot of companies are looking at right now is they're trying to figure out, okay, we're just now getting to the stages of analyzing things. So, and then when you're analyzing things, you're realizing things are bad. So you've got some misinformation in there and it leads to bad results, especially if you add intelligence to it. So how do you start to clean that up? And that's really where companies are really starting to look into is how do we clean this up and how do we start analyzing and making sure that we have good data to drive good intelligence?
Which I think is one of the things that we're really trying to dig into today is to break it down, make it achievable for people to really diagnose the problem and deal with it bit by bit. It was recently shared that 44% of companies estimate that their company loses over 10% in annual revenue due to poor quality data. And if you think of the close rate of some organizations, that's nearly equal, or maybe just a portion of that. That's a lot of money that that business can be losing. Another customer of ours recently spoke about some of the data layers in their CRM, like layers upon layers upon layers of historical information, and how do you actually clean up this embedded spaghetti? And so hopefully we'll help with that. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We're going to go quickly about, we're going to talk about clean CRM data today, and how you can tackle that to help your team be a little bit more productive. So with that, let me quickly run through the agenda that we have for today. So to start off with, we're going to talk about the problem. So really, what is the impact of bad data on your productivity? We'll then skip on over into tackling it. What are some of the things that you need to do to really get yourself going? Who do you need to get bought in? Next, we're going to break it into 4 different time wasters or symptoms of bad data that you can deal with one by one. And next, we're going to talk about some advice. Angie's done a really great job at Huber and some of her other jobs to really speak up. And I'm sure there's people in the audience who are about to start a project and just need that little bit of, I think, like a hype song or like some mantra to be able to get themselves at that point to really advocate for good data. And then we're going to lead into the Q&A and really wrap this up with anything that you have questions about. So let's get started. When understanding the impact of bad data, you need to think about where, how, and who is interacting with your CRM. And do they truly know all that goes on underneath the surface? Different departments really only see or know the data processes related to their function. I can speak for that at marketing. We're pretty selfish. We're like, I need this. Can you do it now? We don't really think about how that impacts others. In addition to that, there's a lot of different data sources that are coming into our CRM. It's not just manual people entering things. It is your Pardot. It is your Marketos of the world. It's your ERP. Angie, how do you manage all the data sources that are coming into your CRM?
It really is, can be a challenge. And, the more we grow, the more challenging it is. Our environment is relatively lucky right now. It's a one-way with our ERP system. So we're not sending bad information to our ERP system. Our company was really worried about that. But hopefully we can grow a little bit more. But more often than times, you have ERP systems that are writing into your Salesforce system. You've got marketing systems. You've got other data enrichment systems. You've got leads coming from multiple places. You've got a lot of information coming into the system. And how do you tackle that? It's a really big challenge. And there's no good place to start. The good place to start is having a good team, and then having the desire to have clean data. I think that's really the bottom line.
Yeah, like I definitely think as you start to tackle these problems, you need to get people just as passionate as we are about fixing it. Otherwise, I guess you're not going to change anything. Yeah. So I think with that, like what we're talking about is like how deep does this go? And who really are we talking to when we need to, address bad data?
There's lots of different people. I mean, luckily for me, I interact with so many people across the organization. But with that, it really is trying to educate people on different parts of the organization and what parts the data can go really deep. And oftentimes in your day-to-day role, whether you're in sales, whether you're in operations, whether you're in customer care, you're in the plant, oftentimes people don't realize how the different information connects to each other. The bigger, the better, the more 360 of an organization that you have, the better people understand how that information interacts with other people. But the big thing is trying to get people in their role is to understand how other information, the information that they put in, affects other people. The salespeople put in bad information, and therefore the marketing does some insights on information into the system. And you want to market to companies within the organization, but that information, the industry or something like that, gets put in incorrectly into your Salesforce, into your CRM. And then it in turn creates worse leads coming in because that wasn't the type of industry you were targeting. So it's really important to indicate to different people that are using the information how this information is important to everybody else, and really ask a lot of questions, understand what their goal is, and educate them in different ways.
I think you started to talk about like, how does this actually impact your reporting? Because at the end of the day, all of the data that's coming in is supposed to help you drive insights. How do you forecast, make decisions if the data's not right?
It's nearly impossible. I mean, like that iceberg you indicated, sometimes that information is, there's so much information below the surface. There's so much information that's easily visible. It's hard when you start analyzing that information. You can go down a really deep path. You can also stay relatively shallow and just see some basic information. It gets really challenging to understand that information, and it's hard to clean it up sometimes. It's hard to start from different places, and who interacts with that information. And it's really important to understand everything you have and who is interacting with it.
At the end of the day, like usually when it comes to cleaning things up or reporting effectively, that onus ends up falling onto, the sales ops, the rev ops, the Salesforce admins. And that turns into like a lot of manual effort.
It is a lot of manual effort. It is.
With I think a lot of the people on the call today, this is what impacts them. How do you, personally, how does it impact you?
Well, somebody comes to me with a seemingly simple ask. I had a marketing person come to me and say, "Hey, can you give me the accounts with this information?" And I have to be intuitive enough to think through. I have to actually ask questions, but I have to have some intuition. More often than not, they just don't want that one simple thing. They want multiple things. So the example that I'm giving is, marketing person says, "Hey, I want these accounts that have been purchasing this product in the past." It's not that simple, but do you really just want those accounts? Or do you want our prospect data that showed interest in those accounts? And do you also want the industries that these accounts were to, and find similar industries? So you can go down a wormhole. And like I said, oftentimes marketing or different people don't think about how much information they can get. And it becomes really time consuming for me when somebody asks me for something simple. "Oh, this should be a quick export," or "This should be a quick report." And it never is, because by the time I get it to them, then they're like, "Oh, I didn't do this," or "I meant to ask you for this," or I have to have some intuition to think, okay, what are they going to use this for? But there's also a lot of times where I have to ask a lot of questions. And I think sometimes people are saying, "Oh, you ask too many questions." But more often than not, I have to ask those questions, because usually it comes back up if I didn't ask that question. But, I might say, "Oh, what are you using this for?" Some examples would say, "Oh, what are you using it for? Oh, what other type of information are you going to use this? Are there other information that you might want?" So somebody says, "I just want a list of contacts for a marketing email." Okay, well, what role of the contacts do you need? Are you wanting to target? Does it make sense for you? We're a chemical manufacturer. Do you want to target the marketing roles that we have within the organization? Do you really want to target the quality people? That's not really that relevant. So you have to ask a lot of questions, and oftentimes I get lost in the weeds. We often all get lost in the weeds, but I get lost in the data because there's just too much information there, but there's just not a lot of questions that are asked. I can give you something simple, but more often than not, the simple thing you want is not as simple as you want it.
I think one of the things that I really loved that when we chatted before is you talked about this Titanic metaphor of being either Rose or Jack.
Yes. I mean, oftentimes, like I said, I can get lost in the data, and if somebody wants something, if somebody like my CIO wants some information from me, you know, you get lost in it. And sometimes I can't tell if that I'm Rose just barely staying afloat on that door, or if I am Jack just like slowly sinking in the information. It's really challenging, and there's a lot that you can give to your company and provide, but it really does come down to a lot of things of asking questions, educating them on what is there. More often than not, they don't realize all the information that is in the system and that we're holding and can provide.
Which I think is a really good one, because we want to understand how other people feel. So are you sinking like Jack? Are you hanging on like Rose? Or are you the crew member who kind of gets a little bit more visibility? You kind of see it coming, which leads us to our second poll for everyone in the audience today. Let us know how you feel. We'll give you
I think I classify myself as a lot of different options in there, for sure.
I think the thing is like you probably have a gamut. Everyone can have a good day and everyone can have a really bad day. And so, you know, where is everyone's head at today? Today might be the end of quarter for a number of people, so they might be pulling their hair out and having a bit of a tough time. But we have a bit of a balance there.
Okay.
Good to see that not as many people are sinking, but it's okay if you are sinking like Jack. Our goal is to help you tackle some of these problems and really take control of your data. So I think with that, we might start to look into how you actually solve this. Like, Angie, where do you recommend that people start?
That's a good question, and I think it can get complicated. But I've said multiple times, ask questions. I think the biggest thing is making sure you ask what information is needed and educate people. Educate different people across the organization on what is there and what can we capture. You know, the thing that I say is, you know, you can get great information from other sources inside to supplement your data. But in my opinion, and what I keep trying to tell our marketing team and different teams is, yeah, I can provide you a supplemental information, but the information that's going to be most relevant is information you can capture from those users, from not the users, the salespeople. You salespeople are talking to these accounts all the time. The marketing people are asking questions. If there's something that you want that you can supply, yeah, I can say what I think this person's role is, or I can ask the question to them directly. As a marketing person, I can say, hey, what is your role? So, you know, it's a good thing to educate people on, yes, we can provide some of this information, but it's only as good as, you know, there's a lot of sources out there. There's DMB, there's Zoom Info, there's all these other sources out there that can supplement your data. They're great. They're a great resource to have. At the end of the day, they help our salespeople and our marketing people drive some insights. But the best information you're going to get is the information directly from the source. If I'm talking to a contact, I want to make sure that the information I have is relevant. So making sure that the salespeople have an easy ability, the marketing people have an easy ability and a way to capture that information so that they can capture it. Make sure there's a field to capture it so you know which one is outside sources, which one's inside sources. And it goes back to making sure that there's a lot of people that are involved, to educate them on the other people that are involved and what information is important to them.
Yeah, I definitely think marketing is probably the worst. We can be so consumed by what we need that we don't understand really what is going on below the surface. I think we had a really good, a good example of this is like what we see, you know, the sunshine above the iceberg. There's some things that we know, but we really don't understand what's going on below. Which I think kind of leads to, while you deal with a lot of data, Angie, there's a large part of your role that feels like it's change management. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. Most of my role is probably change. I can't tell you which one is more change management or user management or data management. I can't tell you which one falls heavily. I think each day depends on what it is, but by far change management is the biggest thing I interact with and struggle with. Don't we all?
Yeah. And like, I think we spoke previously about one of the things that you really did to future-proof your decisions, which I really love, this idea of a super group. Do you want a super user group? Do you want to talk me through kind of how you're doing this and how you're test driving some changes that you guys are making?
Well, I'm definitely going to say we're not perfect. There's definitely a lot of growth that we have to do. I think across any organization, super users are going to be key. If you don't have a set of super user group, I definitely recommend it. We have super users and try to be in every part of the organization, whether it be quality, our quality team. Again, I'm part of a chemical manufacturing organization. So we do have a quality team for the end chemical product. We have customer care, we have sales, we have marketing. We have so many different people that are involved. And I try to make sure that we have a super user for each component of that business. And then my organization is unique because we have different business units within the same org. And so I'm trying to make sure that we have somebody by each business unit. Now, my super user group is awesome. If any of them are on the call, I try to tell them every chance that they get that they're awesome and they're amazing people, and they help me significantly. They help me do the day-to-day interaction, but they also can help drive. They're the ones interacting with the data on a daily basis. I have super users that let me know when they find duplicates. And I'm kind of that one that cleans it up, but that super user group is really important. I'd really like to grow our super user group and have them be a little bit more technical, but it's something that I'm trying to push to our business right now. But make sure that your super user group is there. And I really recommend you have super users for every part of your business.
Awesome. Really great tip there, Angie. So guys, let's dive into it. We know that bad data can feel so big that often people just decide to live with it or ignore it. But we're not those people. We thought it might be useful to really break down this big, lofty problem into 4 symptoms. Time wasters, really set the scene of a problem that we can solve, and making sure, hey, we're actually tackling this one problem at a time. So I'm going to kick it right on into time waster number 1, setting the scene. I'm a sales rep. I've been working a lead or an account for over a month, and I've noticed that lead has been coming to the website. I'm like, yes, it's only a matter of time until they convert, right? Well, that is until one of 2 things happen. The customer directly tells you they're talking to another team member. And so for you, you've lost time and a potential deal. The other option, which is similar but not as friendly, is that the customer tells you to stop contacting them. I've told Karen, I am not interested. Why do you not know this? Angie, this is a problem that I'm sure happens all the time and is super frustrating for reps. what standard processes would you put in place to help people mitigate this problem?
Well, there's definitely a lot of tools out there that you can use. I think communication is key. Oftentimes, you can get some information when marketing does not properly communicate with sales and what the follow-up actions are. Like they may be sending multiple emails that comes across sometimes, but the biggest way to prevent some of that is to utilize tools to utilize duplicate options. There's several tools out there that you can utilize that removes duplicates to let you know if that contact is already in the system. That's going to be the best way. And then lead routing and utilizing, and something that we haven't quite mastered yet is to make sure you look at information that's already in the system and route leads based on who's already assigned to that account. Oftentimes, sometimes you have a lead routing to a standard business development rep or something, but if that account or that contact's already in the system, utilizing email matching, for example, and then that contact's already in the system, that lead should be routed to that person and not necessarily a business development rep. Because in that case, you might get a business development rep talking to somebody that you already have a good relationship with. And that can cause some big confusion.
So putting together a standard match and merge process and identifying what objects you use for that matching can help you kind of mitigate people working the same account or working the same lead, because using either routing, you can get them to the right place and you don't waste the other person's time. So one recommendation, create a match and merge process and get people to buy into it. I think as we start to look at duplicates, they can really show up in a number of different ways. And so that really leads us to the time waster number 2. Stepping back into my sales rep persona, my next call is with account X. And it's coming up and I'm starting to prepare for that call. And I realize there are multiple accounts with different information on them. Some have cases, some have activities, some have different location data. So how do I know which one I should be looking at? Angie, how do you help your teams identify the right one to use? And maybe are there circumstances where duplicates are okay?
That's always a tricky one, and it's always a hard one because we do get it a lot. I mean, who doesn't get that a lot? Even with my clean data, it does come across. So I utilize my super user system to alert me when there is information. And I look at a lot of different resources. If there's the thing with merging accounts, if there's a blank, it's easy to figure out what the answer is. But if there's two sources and they're both different, and they're both going to be very different, it can become really challenging. And having that multiple accounts, it's a big waste of time as a sales rep. Mine, you can see emails, you can see activities, and let's say you don't see that it's already connected to our ERP system. So you're thinking you're selling them. Hopefully that doesn't happen a lot, but on occasion it does happen. So the best way to do that is to utilize your super user team to help them identify and make sure you communicate with the salespeople. They're the ones interacting. Make sure you communicate with all of your users to let you know, hey, there's duplicates in the system. I need to know that so that we can merge those together. We really need to make sure that we build an environment that makes all the different users in the system accountable for the data that's in there. And accountable means helping make sure that the data is clean. And that's really the challenge that you have, but it's important to make sure you communicate to everybody what's in the system and why should they be accountable for it.
With your system, Angie, do you use like a external or a third-party data source to help you, identify that source of truth when you do understand that there is lots of different accounts? Like, what do you use as that unique identifier?
So There's a couple resources we use. I don't want to really do too much name drop, but we do use some DMB. We use Traction Complete, obviously. But I think it really is a matter of being close as an administrator or business analyst, being close to my sales team, being close to my user group, and being able to ask them what really is the source of information that's actually true. I can only know so much, but I'm not afraid to ask a question before I merge them and lose that valuable information. So make sure as an administrator or as a salesperson, you indicate what's important to you. If you see a duplicate account, make sure you understand, hey, there's some information that's mismatched here. Make sure you have a conversation. Now that doesn't need to be with every single account. Obviously, that's not realistic. But on the key accounts that you have, if there's important information, make sure you indicate what's important on there.
I think that understanding the team and what is really important to them is key to making sure that any technology, any process is working. I think as we lead into the next one, this is a time waster that everyone in sales will go through from time to time, because everyone has to choose the next account. So it's come to that time in the quarter when that sales rep needs to create their top account list. They know their territory is Chicago, but how do they actually determine which accounts they're going to prospect into? As a rep, maybe I surf my CRM, maybe I look at Google. I might check Crunchbase if, we're looking at mergers and acquisitions, those kind of things, or LinkedIn. Hours have gone by and I still haven't finished my list. Angie, how does your team enable reps when it comes to sourcing their account lists? And is there anything that you would recommend people looking at first?
When sourcing new information?
When looking for new accounts, yeah, how do I understand where to go next?
I think it's important to really look at what you do have in the system. I think from a business standpoint, as a business intelligence team, your team can really understand who are we selling to. We utilize, we have a tool in our CRM Salesforce, it's Salesforce Maps, that we're not using as well as we could. And it actually has the ability to have you search in your territory, your region, similar accounts to what you already have. But again, it goes back to business intelligence. What kind of accounts do you have in your system that you can find similar accounts?
Yeah, I think one of the really great things, and obviously we're trying not to give too much lip service to our own product, but Hierarchies can also help in this place, because you're connecting everything together. And if your team is looking at building territories based on relationships, yeah. I think one of the things that we kind of help with is enabling people to see how they're connected. So you might have a different department that is working an account, and you can leverage that relationship to really land and expand as we grow.
Hierarchies has a really cool feature called white space. And honestly, I think some of our sales teams are using that from the accounts that you already have. So you have the ability to say, hey, I'm already working with these accounts within that hierarchy, and you can look for white space, what they call as white space, or companies within that hierarchy that aren't actively in the system. And there's a cool feature, and maybe there's another conversation for that, but you have the ability to add new accounts quickly from that hierarchies. And I completely forgot about it, even though I know I with Traction. But yeah, that's a really cool feature that our team, I'm not sure if we use it as well as we do. We could, but I know there's several people that use it and actually really like it.
We like to be omnipresent. We like that people use the platform without always knowing exactly it's us. But yeah, no, just plugging it in there a little bit. I think the last one really speaks to a lot of the challenges that you've mentioned. does have to do with like playing with different departments. And marketing, I think we can probably be some of the worst people to deal with from a CRM perspective, because we want to do so much with the data. Like there's so much different ways that we want to segment, we want to nurture, we want to build scoring, all these things and above, that I think when it comes to last time waste, we can sometimes not quite be aligned with the sales team. And what ends up having is like misguided or stalled follow-up, because the data on the leads are not necessarily what the sales team needs in order to effectively reach out. So time ends up being lost due to incomplete information. How do you approach this with your team, Angie, and what do you recommend?
I think we talked about this the last time a little bit, and I think page layouts are really important. And I try to get feedback from my team and the different people that use the system on what's important to them. I actually just had a conversation with one of my colleagues today on, what information do I need to surface for you that can be coming from another source that'll help you. But page layouts are important. I try to make sure that I have the information that's important to them at the top of the page. And the information from third-party providers are in a different section. I put that in a different section for a reason, so that they know that that may be information that are coming from a different source, but it may or may not be true and not true and valid, but it may be outdated information. Like I said, the best way to get information is directly from people. So if you're a sales rep and you're not getting the information you need to help you do your job, just same thing with customer service. If you were a customer service person and you're not getting the information that's relevant to you, make sure you communicate with the appropriate people. For sales, I think it's really important to communicate with the marketing team. And oftentimes that stage gets a little bit left off. And it's a process. It's not everything. I think the hardest part that I struggle with, I love our marketing team, and I know how they function. No, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to understand how different teams function. And marketing is used to having to be adjusting, but at the same time, they want things to go out at perfect state. And oftentimes, like we have a couple forms on our different various web pages, and I have to remind them that it's something that's agile. So make sure if you're a salesperson, you don't have the information at hand, make sure you communicate that to the marketing team so that we can add that on their page, on the questionnaire. That's the part that I feel like often gets left out from those teams, is the marketing team and the sales team don't necessarily communicate what's important for you to do your job. And make sure you have a good conversation with those and a good relationship with your marketing team, because they're going to bring you valid and good leads, but they don't know if they're not bringing you the right information.
I think we're often running at 1,000,001 miles per hour that we make assumptions sometimes. And I think we all know what assumptions do to people, that it's worth having that check-in to make sure that you actually are giving the right information to people to be successful and like really move at the pace that customers expect. To be able to get responded to, because otherwise you're going to lose their business.
Yes.
So thanks, Angie. I think like we just covered the 4 time wasters that impact bad data. We're just going to bring them up onto the screen again so people can see them. We are also going to include these in a handout at the end. So from there, if you joined us a little late and you missed some of the practical strategies, we also have got those recapped on the next 2 slides. But we'll have this in a 1-pager for everyone. These are just some really practical and simple tips from our friend Angie. Thank you. Your background in science and sales ops, as well as being a rep, I think adds that layer that people need when they need to understand different departments. So I think before we head over to Q&A, it's likely that a number of others in the audience are about to pitch a data project to leadership. What advice would you give others who are looking to get buy-in or step up in their career?
That is a big challenge. Anybody who knows me probably knows that I'm pretty vocal about things. But the biggest challenge I get is I'm not afraid to step up. But the biggest challenge that I get, and the recommendation I've been given and that I try to give out is how to have that conversation, but make sure that you're trying to tell a story. So, having a conversation with that team is really important, but how do you communicate why that's important, and why you need to have that conversation is really, you need to tell a story. So I think it's really important to understand, give them acknowledgement that you need to be involved in that conversation. You need to explain why you need to be involved in that conversation.
I think also you mentioned previously, again, like understanding what the end goal is and really what the purpose is, because people can think that way, but they don't forget, they kind of miss the messy middle, which means that you actually have to do a lot of things to get things done. But you only know that if you ask the questions or educate.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes, like I'm not afraid to step up, but I do often get forgotten about in that conversation. So I really need to make myself visible and remind people that I need to be involved in the conversation. So some examples that have come up recently are acquisitions. Our company has been has acquired some companies. We may be acquiring some new companies. And I keep saying, hey, I need to have a seat at that table and have a conversation and understand really, what's real, because down the line, it's happened before, and they say, oh, there's 5 salespeople. They're not really using a CRM. And then it comes up that they are using a CRM and there's 20 salespeople and they want them in the system in 6 weeks. And nobody asked the questions. I'm not saying that this happened, but it does happen. But sometimes those questions don't get asked. And I get questions like third person down the row, that, having a conversation and being involved with that would have probably helped me better prepare, rather than just get thrown that information and get thrown into the pile of that project.
I really like how you said about telling a story, because you have to be able to, articulate like exactly, how to get buy-in from your leadership so they can listen and see the impacts of what they're doing. You talked about acquisition a moment ago. Is there any other fine details within that story that would help people understand how to stand up?
I think you asked this a little bit ago and I didn't answer it very well. I think I always tell people the first thing is to ask a question, ask the questions, be quiet and listen to what's happening, and then ask questions and truly hear the response. So an example for an acquisition could be, okay, well, there's 3 salespeople. What are those salespeople doing? How are they selling? Is there a marketing team? What type of information is coming? What type of data is there? And being able to tell that story and say, this is why I need to be involved in this conversation. So, this example for the acquisition could be, look, it came in, it's going to be really important for me to have, be involved with this conversation, because they may be having data they may be utilizing Salesforce, they may be utilizing another CRM. What type of information do they have? So being able to communicate and tell that story and saying, I need this because this is why this is important to me. And you mentioned this in this question. When I asked you this question, you mentioned this, and this is why it's going to be important to have this information. It's a challenge, and it's something that I struggle with. I have a tendency, and I think we all have a tendency to say, no, that doesn't work for me, or or I need more information from somebody that's a chemist. Like I always need more information. But, I need to be better about making sure I ask the question and having to be able to tell the story of why it's important that I need to be involved and what information can be lost if I'm not involved.
Yes. Speak up, get a seat at the table. I think that's one of the things that we really want to advocate for people in RevOps and sales ops, that, the opportunity to speak up with your project is now. And so in order to make sure that you're kind of future-proofing problems for the future, you really need to get that seat at the table. So thank you so much for sharing your recommendations with us today, Angie. I know I've learned a few new things that I want to try. Let's skip on over to the Q&A. And while we do that, we do have a survey or a poll that we're going to put up for you guys. We're really interested in making sure that we create content that is useful for the people on the call and other folks within Salesforce, sales ops, you name it. And so we'd really like to understand which of the talking points today really resonated with you and what you would really like to learn more about as we start to create new content going into the future. So with that, Angie, we have a couple of questions that have come in while we were talking through it. Some go a little bit deeper on topics that we have covered. So if there's any extra color that you feel like you could share or red flags to look for, let's do it. Otherwise, we can kind of skip on in and cover some of the other topics. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. So I think one of the things that's really interesting about when it comes to, we're going to go straight with Eric. Sorry, I was skipping through to Kathleen. So we just touched on this, so there might not be too much extra color, but is there any data red flags? So we talked about being at the table when it comes to acquisition, but to keep your CRM clean, is there anything that you should look out for when you're looking at merging two accounts or two companies into one CRM?
I could go on this for ages, and I'm actually dealing like knee deep in this right now. We're in the process of bringing an ERP system that into our Salesforce, into our existing ERP system from an acquisition and into the Salesforce. Our sales team has been using Salesforce, and once those accounts are loaded into that ERP system, we're going to have a lot of duplicates, and I'm going to have to do a lot of data cleanup. So there's a couple of things you can do. I'm going to try to organize this in my brain. So we're going to utilize some key features to match accounts, and bringing some of that information in. This example is a lot of those accounts are already in the system. So how do you bring that information in without creating a bunch of duplicates? And I am stomping my foot right now about it. And it's a tricky thing. I think there's a lot of tools that are out there that can kind of help you. We're going to use DUNS numbers, hopefully, maybe some address information to match them. We luckily have a system where you can have multiple business units and use that same account. So the big thing is one, I don't think you should put that information into the production system. Don't just pull information from the new acquisition and put it into your system. I think it's really important to pull some of that information out and match it before you import it, and then import the Delta file. If you're just going to upload everybody from the new acquisition and don't match accounts and try to prevent the duplicates before you merge it into the systems, you're just going to have a lot more information to clean up. And that just makes my stomach sick right now. So that's a big red flag, is always make sure to not import information without deduplicating it before you import it into the system. So that may be pulling information out from one system and matching it to the other system. When merging companies, I think it's important to make sure you capture the fields and add new fields in that may be important to those sales reps. And sometimes I hate having an excess number of fields, but it's going to go back to those page layouts. Make sure you have page layouts that are relevant to your business units. If this new organization has some information that you don't want to lose, make sure you put it in a field. You can always hide that field later, but it's once you get rid of that data or it goes into after you import it, you're likely not going to import it again. So make sure you create fields that's relevant and you show fields that's relevant to that new company you've acquired. Your new sales teams may not have realized they were missing that information. So it could always be something that you have, and make sure you have a conversation with both sales teams to make sure you're showing relevant information. I hope I answered that completely.
I think you did a great job. I think you gave some technical recommendations. I think one of the things that really stood out is like, slow down. I think you have, in a lot of situations, people are going to have impatient stakeholders who want to be like, I just want to hit the ground running. I want to have all the information in there that I need to be able to prospect. But if you just uploaded all that data, you'd end up having the time waster of people searching for things that are duplicates that doesn't make sense. So I think what you want to do is make sure people understand the consequences of doing something fast versus taking some time to really walk your way through it. Because at the end of the day, you mentioned before, like, it's harder to try and pull back information that you've missed or that you've excluded to report on in the future. So it's better to make sure you really consider it at the start. Future-proof your, future Angie's reporting in 2023. You're like, let's make sure that we have that dealt with. So I think this is a real interesting one because, personally, I believe, I want to share everything, but that's not always the most effective way for some sales reps. So how do you tackle this?
Well, I think you should tackle it in multiple ways. It's not just a one and done type of thing. One, you have an open conversation with your sales teams and really understand from an admin standpoint or, a business analyst standpoint, understand what information is relevant to them. I like to use page layouts and different record types so that you only show the information that's important. I think I've seen other systems where they just show way too much information. You have to scroll to the bottom of the page to figure out what information you need. So it's important to make sure you have a conversation and then go back to that super user group. Always don't be afraid on your monthly calls. I do it not often enough, but we do the monthly calls. I ask for feedback, but at least quarterly, try to have a call and have them say, hey, what can we do to improve your experience on the page layout? And what information is important to you? Another recommendation that I right now don't have time for, but I really recommend as a business analyst or administrator that you do this, and I want to start doing this, is having where I sit with the sales reps, a sales rep, customer care, sit with people that are doing the job day to day. So I understand what information is important to them and how they do things. And that actually helps me long term so that I can help define and better find a process where they have inefficiencies.
Awesome. Well, Angie, we are at the top of the hour, and our lovely friend Eduardo has come back to join us.
Yeah.
We hope everyone's enjoyed the content that we've got today. We have a couple of questions that we didn't get to. So, folks, we will be answering these with a blog article at a later date, as well as a handout. So we will not miss those. But thank you so much, Angie. You're an absolute rock star.
I'm always happy to help. So I love talking. If anybody didn't figure that out. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and also thank you back for the amazing moderation today. And thank you, Traction Complete, for sponsoring this event. While the speakers and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure to put the recordings in the MSP website. You can find it there. And if you answer the poll saying that you're Jack, you're sinking, or your roles just like barely surviving, hit the request a demo button right up here on your screen because Traction Complete will not let you sync. They will help you thrive. Let's go backstage, back and NG, so we can talk a little bit. And the MSP team will make sure the video will be available for everyone with the key takeaways. There are many from NG because she is amazing. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll see you in the next event. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.